What if I told you that every producer has a period in their process where they actually suck at making beats? That's right, even the top dogs, your favorite producers in the game, hit a roadblock and said, you know what, I'm just not that good. But they kept going. So it's important to know where you're at in the process as well. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video by Prodllb talking about the different phases of learning the music production process that we all go through. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end of this video because there's a ton of valuable information that you're definitely going to need as you learn to work through the process. So without further ado, let's get into it.
There's a statistic I came across the other day that really made me stop and think. So right here, Exposure Music Industry Report shows that only around 13% of musicians and producers ever make a full-time income from music, which means that I guess the other 87% either quit or just, do music as a hobby. Now, at first that number did surprise me. I've been doing music full-time for over 6 years and I'm normally around people that have been doing it as well, same kind of circle. But then I actually thought about it properly. I low-key kind of forgot about all the years before that, the years of making absolutely nothing, the years where I was putting in an absolute ton of effort but wasn't getting any traction, no recognition, and no clear sign that it was actually ever really gonna work. Now that phase is uncomfortable, and when you factor in all of those things, then that 13% number starts to make a lot of sense. I don't think most producers quit because they're lazy or they just don't care enough. I think a lot of them quit because they skip a phase that can't really be skipped. Now I call it the unsexy phase. Not because it's bad, but because there's nothing really exciting about it from the outside. There's no attention, no money, no validation, just quiet progress. When I started taking production seriously back in 2017, I was doing what most producers do. Any spare time that I had went into making a ton of beats, spamming artists to buy my beats, making a bunch of kits that no one ever saw, basically just trying to make something happen. And at the time, I thought I was locked in, I thought I was in that grind mode. But looking back, I was mostly just doing a bunch of random things, hoping that if I just worked hard enough, then eventually things would come together, everything would click. I'd have M's in the bank, I'd be Drake's next go-to producer. Obviously none of those things happened.
Yes, we all go through that phase where we watch a bunch of different videos. We think we're the next hottest thing and we just cook up nonstop. Back in my days when we started, we really didn't even really have YouTube. Don't really want to date myself. We had something called Scratch Magazine, and that's how we kind of got our inspiration. When you're cooking up, you're learning the music production process, it's easy to hit a phase where you actually think you're better than what you actually are. And you can even get frustrated and feel like, okay, why aren't artists purchasing my beats? Am I approaching them wrong? Are they just hating on me? Do I have this style that's so off the beaten path? They just don't get it. I'm just way too artistic. I'm out there. I'm next level. And they just don't understand my artistry. I've seen that in person in the studio, kind of like me here with content creation. When I first started, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really know how to edit. I just was kind of like a chicken with his head cut off, but I kept at it consistently, day after day, watching different videos, getting feedback and things like that. And that's how I was able to actually, get to the point where I'm now monetized on YouTube, which is a huge accomplishment. And the same thing is true for music production. Getting quote unquote monetized is you selling beats online, selling beats in person. And that's going to take you consistently putting in the work, getting feedback, and understanding how the process actually goes. And that's another reason why I have my Heat Check live beat review show that you can check out in the description. Go ahead and submit your beats and I'll go ahead and give you my feedback live on air, and you can use that information to help you grow and develop as a music producer as well. But let's go ahead and get back into the video.
But with that being said, I was in a pretty fortunate situation at the time. I was young, I didn't really have any financial responsibilities, which I guess really gave me the mental space to be basically delusional for so long, just keep going even when nothing was working. Fast forward to 2020, and yeah, I was then able to figure things out financially and, make the transition to go full time. Bear in mind, this was during COVID as well, so, time was a luxury for both myself and, most of the world. But in reality, I know that the majority of producers don't really have the luxuries that I had back then, especially when you've hit your mid-20s. Real life starts to matter a lot more. You got bills to pay, a family to feed, a mortgage, children, so when you've been trying to do music for a few years and it's still not working out and you decide to push things to the side, then yeah, I fully understand why most producers do walk away from chasing a career in music.
That's another thing that happens to producers and also content creators. There was a studio that I used to go to way back in the day, back in the Dallas area. And one of the engineers that I used to, kind of chop it up with, network with, he had to stop because, as mentioned, real life happened, real responsibilities hit. And, he told me, hey, I got to get, real health insurance. I can't be up here doing this. I got real things that going on. And also the same thing happens in the content creation world. Those things hit, it's not as structured as, a regular 9 to 5 job is. And then people unfortunately have to throw in the towel, get the 9 to 5 job, and have that safe structure and stability that so many people are needing and desiring to sustain themselves and sustain a family. So if you guys see somebody that you really like just totally disappear, a lot of times it's not that they don't like you or they don't like creating content no more. It's that they have to pull the plug on their machine to get something more sustainable and safe. So let's get back into the video.
Now, something I think is really important to say clearly is that most producers who do end up going full-time in music do not do it quickly. This doesn't get said often enough, man. But yeah, for myself and for a lot of the producer friends that I know, it took at least 5 to even 10 plus years to go full time. Now I know some of you will be like, but bro, you just said you fucking started in 17 and you went full time by 2020. Math ain't mathing, bro. Yes, I did start taking music production seriously in 2017, but I actually started making music like way back in 2012. 2017 was when I tried to make money from music and failed miserably. 2020 comes around and that's when I'm actually able to, pull everything together. So it wasn't fast by any means. I just didn't count the unsexy part. From experience, through meeting hundreds of producers, either in person or through my mentorship program, if we were to lay, a typical producer's timeline out in front of us, then it'd look a little something like this. First, you start as a beginner, everything feels hard, progress is really slow, and then comes what I call the unsexy phase. So this is usually 2 to 3 years, of focused practice, or in my case, 5 years. This is where you quietly build skill. There's no results yet, no placements, no nothing. You're just focused on improvement.
Yes, and speaking about production and timeline, so I want you guys to definitely get good at making beats. Be able to make fire beats. If an artist comes to the studio, you want to be able to make something that sounds good, something that they can use to create a really good song. That being said, one of the main routes that I've seen producers use to go full time and really get away from the structured 9 to 5 jobs, and that's actually through engineering, through knowing how to record artists, through knowing how to mix a song from beginning to end, through knowing how to use Pro Tools. I know there's a lot of videos out there about Pro Tools versus FL Studio, Pro Tools versus Logic. At the end of the day, these studio owners that if I pull up in my car and go down the street and I go and open up the computer, it's going to be Pro Tools. And get yourself a microphone, get yourself a compressor, and man, start recording your local friends, your family members, because if you really want to do this, it's going to be much easier, at least from my experience, to record, mix, and actually work with or at directly a recording studio. So let's go ahead and get back into the video.
Improvement. Now, after that, one of two things usually happens. Some producers think they're ready way too early, maybe around this 6 to 12, maybe 18 months in. They try and turn music into money, sell beats, sell sample packs, start a YouTube channel, whatever. It doesn't work. And then they just assume that they failed and they quit. This is what I call the spontaneous problem. I'll explain what that is in a second. Other producers, they do genuinely get good. They go through this unsexy phase of producing. They get all the way to year 3 and then decide to take things seriously, which is perfect. But instead of building one solid way of making money, they try to build like 5 random ones all at the same time. Now, some money might actually come in from this, they're actually good enough to make music, so they might actually make a little bit of money, but there's nothing consistent. Eventually it feels unsustainable, so they stop, they either quit or just turn music into a hobby. Now, these producers over here, they don't fail because their strategy was wrong. They fail because of what I mentioned earlier, the spontaneous problem. Basically, the product, i.e. their production, just wasn't ready. It's like opening a restaurant when you haven't really fully learned how to cook.
These are definitely great points, but I also want to add this. There are producers out there who have a skill set outside of the music making skill set, and that's that's like a fire that they have in them. That's this tenacity. That's the ability to go through pain and a lot of rejection and still continuously persevere. That's something that I've heard about producers like Mike Will. This is a person who wouldn't take no for an answer in the sense of, consistently following up. Do you need more beats? Following up. And as you can see, he's definitely one of the greats in the music production game. And of course, he's talented as a producer, but that stick to itiveness is something that definitely, let's just say there's other producers around his same skill set. Maybe they got rejected too many times, felt like people were hating on them, or maybe there was a money situation. Maybe some people lost money and felt like throwing in the towel, but that perseverance is definitely gonna take you a long way. Guys, there's lots of skilled producers out there. There's even lots of skilled engineers out there. But if you can push through failures, man, I'm telling you, you're gonna go a long way. You're gonna be built different, and people are gonna know you're gonna be built different, and it's gonna show in how you interact with people. But let's get back into the video.
They don't give up because their production's bad. Their product's actually really good and they've maybe got confidence behind their music. They give up because they just overwhelm themselves trying to build like 5 different income streams all at the same time, which is a tall order for anyone, even people that are good at the business side. So when you look at it like this, then it really isn't surprising why 87% of producers don't make it. Some weren't ready skill-wise, some didn't spend enough focused time building one specific way of making money, and some might just run out of time, money, or energy to do it. That does not mean they failed. It just means that the process is longer and harder than most people expect going in.
All right, that's another great point. One thing that I want to add is, as you go on this music production journey, always be aware of what people tell you that you're good at that you think doesn't really mean much of anything. So let's just say you're a producer who makes beats, and then someone says, man, your mixes sound really good. And then you hear that again, man, your mixes sound really good. And then you hear a third time, man, your mixes sound really good. And there's something to that. There's something to that you don't recognize as valuable, but other people do recognize as valuable. And that's something that you definitely need to be paying attention to, because it's not something that you may want to do. You may feel like it's kind of boring. You want to be the top. You want to be the next Metro Boomin, but people might hear something in your production or see something about you that's more geared towards another angle, another area of the music game that you're overlooking because you're so focused on being the quote unquote celebrity. So always pay attention to what people compliment you on as you interact with different people, as you collab with different people in person. Maybe it's sound design. Maybe you know how to tune a vocal really well. You just jump on auto tune and you just really know how to make it sound fire. There could be something to that. So always be aware. Where you end up in music production may not always be where you start. So always pay attention to the feedback. But let's get back into the video.
So I guess the real question becomes, okay, how do I give myself a real fighting chance to be part of that 13%? My honest advice to most producers is simple. Spend more time getting really fucking good at music before you start thinking about turning it into a career. Not good for Instagram, not my friends say it's hard, actually solid. This means good sound selection, clean leveling, good arrangements, a good workable understanding of mixing, and basically just having the ability to confidently say, I can intentionally make really good music that other people also fuck with and they really like too. And importantly, don't do this part alone. Learning completely solo just takes way longer and it just makes it easier to give up. Mr. 5 years over here to get decent can back that up. So cook up with others, learn from other producers ahead of you, get feedback regularly during this phase. It's okay to not think about money at all. You're just building a foundation. If your beats only sound good to you at this point, then you're not there yet.
As they say, guys, it's really important to learn from other people's mistakes so that way they can help guide you on the learning process. That's why I have my Heat Check live beat review show that you can, of course, submit to in the description. Also for me, definitely the engineering side of music production, learning from different mentors helped me a lot. It just showed me a whole new process of understanding sound and EQ and mixing mixing and compression took me a while to even hear. And I learned from other people who just was doing it much longer than me that helped to skill up the learning process. So don't have your ego on your sleeve where you feel like you need to learn everything yourself. You know, I see that a lot in like different comment sections. They, you know, people be like, oh, that's why I'm a mix master. I do everything myself because I don't trust people in the music game. And, you know, you can do that, but I strongly suggest you don't, man. Find people who are levels above you. If you have to pay for some studio time, go pull up with some studio time. If you have to find some collabs with different people online, hit them up, see what you guys can come up with. But please do not learn solo. Learning is a group process, you know, bounce off of each other, have conversations, share different tips and tricks so that way you can learn and you can grow together as a unit as opposed to solo. You know, they say if you want to go far, go together. But let's get back into the video.
I had a producer come through the mentorship program. He wanted to sell beats and work with artists. He was close, probably about 70% of the way there. He was just stuck before this like 2 to 3 year point, you know, right at the back end of that unsexy phase. He had some good ideas, he was almost there, but not consistent enough to get reliable work coming in. He was close to quitting at this point. He kept telling me like he's on the brink of giving everything up. So we just slowed things down, focused on tightening up the fundamentals in his production and really just making his skill level undeniable so that he could consistently make music at a high level. And yeah, fast forward a few months and his music is really strong, and more importantly, he actually trusts his ability, and you know, now he's going out there working with smaller independent artists, which is awesome. That confidence right there matters more than people realize.
I want to add a little bit to that point as well, as far as that individual that he's working with. The thing with music is that there's so many little sub niches within music, in music production more specifically, that there are different skill sets. There's different things that people need that a lot of producers just do without thinking. That's valuable, and then just being perceived as valuable by other people in the music game is enough to just motivate you to make you want to go harder, you know, make you want to stick into it, you know, as opposed to just giving up. Maybe you start in music and you just want to be a beat maker. You're pretty good at making beats, but then another artist comes around, they say, hey man, you know, when you was making that beat, I heard you humming that melody, you know, keep going. And then people find out that you can actually sing, or people find out that you're actually a good hook writer, and maybe somebody starts to recommend you as a hook writer to other people in the music game. So, you know, that really gets back into the importance of interacting with people. I know we have the different tools that can make music making kind of antisocial, but there's ways that people, there's gifts that you have that people can recognize in you. But if you're just solo by yourself on your laptop in a dark room, you're not interacting with people in person, it's going to be hard for people to really point that out. So guys, please make sure you're out there interacting with people, because you never know what comment can spark something in you that lets it be known that you have this certain thing about you that other people need that you don't think is valuable. Let's get back into this video.
So once you're at a point where, you know, your music is consistent, your peers respect your work, and you fully understand your strengths, that's when it makes sense to focus on income. Most producers, especially in the hip hop and trap space, jump straight to wanting to build a tight beat channel and sell a bunch of sample packs. And those do work. You know, I've built both of them myself and have made good money from it. But I'll be honest, man, the space is really competitive. You're trying to sell really low ticket products, you know, anywhere from $5 to $100 per product, which means you got to do a lot of volume, a lot of turnover just to break even, or just to, you know, make money to live off of. You know, definitely worth building over time, but in the beginning, at least, that shouldn't be your main focus. A more realistic starting point for many producers is starting off with custom production for independent artists. Working closely with one artist for a few weeks, helping them turn their, you know, rough demos into a polished final track. Benefits to this is you earn more per client, the final song normally turns out better, and you're actually stepping into the role of an actual producer. And don't worry about location either. Myself and the producers I mentor, we do 95% of our work with artists through Zoom, so you can do all of this remotely. Now, down this route, you can start off by charging roughly $500 to $750 per track. Now, over time, your skill improves, so you can actually end up upping that to around $750 to $2,000 per project, just depending on, you know, the artist's needs at the time. So instead of needing to sell 100 beats at $50 to have a good month financially, you just need to work with a handful of artists per month instead.
Let me touch on that as far as some of my experience with custom production. So for me, it's a bit easier because I'm in Atlanta, I'm in a music hub, But I will say that for me, I would have custom production as an add-on to studio time. So if you get studio time, you also, we can work on custom production. If you have an idea, maybe I have a beat that's already partially made, and then we can go in, tweak some things. So when it comes to custom production, I still want to just put it in you guys' mind, the audio engineering aspect of music production, having a decent mic, having a decent audio compressor, having a decent audio interface. So that way people could come in and you can learn how to stack vocals. You can learn how to use auto tune. All these things are part of music production. So even if someone gets a tight beat online and then people want to customize it, they want to extend the hook, they want to swap the outro for the intro, everything like that, there's just less people out there who know how to do that. You know what I'm saying? So custom production is great, but I would say just optimize more so for the audio engineering side. And if you're good at making beats, you bundle that together. And once you fuse those two assets together, that creates the custom production package type of situation that he's mentioning here. So
build up that sample pack business. You can build a type beat channel, but right here is a good starting point once you've been through the unsexy phase. But yeah, while we're on the subject, there's actually two unsexy phases, one for skills and one for business. You now have to learn things that have absolutely nothing to do with music. Content, networking, sales. This one's so fucking important. Now, I'm telling you now, you won't get this down straight away, just like you didn't get the production down in the early days. But just like production, it's the same process. You try something, you fail, you adapt, and you try again, and you just repeat that process over and over. And once you have that solid foundation in both your skills as a producer and your skills on the business side, you'll actually give yourself a real shot at making a sustainable career in music production.
yes, the business side of music production, one of the most important things, man. You guys spend so much time learning how to get a good kick, learning how to get a good snare. But do you guys know how to follow up? Do you guys know how to send emails on a consistent basis? Do you know how to DM someone to elicit a response that makes them actually want to interact with you, as opposed to just leaving you on scene? I have my Made in the Studio podcast where I reach out to a lot of people and I get left on scene a lot of the times. I don't take it personally. I understand that life happens. People have responsibilities. Sometimes people read the message and a session starts, or, something happens at home and they just totally forget. And, that's a part of business. It's just not taking everything personally, understanding that over time, as you shoot your shots, as you learn to interact with people, you're going to start to develop your own system. You're going to see how people communicate with you and what they're actually trying to convey in their message. So that way you're not just lost. And that might sound a little bit vague, but as you do more, as you get your reps in business, in music, you're going to understand what that means. And you can feel out who's actually sincere, who actually wants to get stuff done, who's just kicking tires and, wasting your time. You'll be able to make that distinction. But guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Where are you at in the music production phase as of right now? Are you in the phase where you're learning how to make beats? Are you in the phase where you're actually starting to get some sales? Are you in the phase where you're contemplating on doing things full time and moving to a big city? Where exactly do you fit right now in the music production landscape? I want to know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit like and subscribe. My name is Desmond A, and I'll be back with more great videos. Peace. Wait, before you go, make sure you go to DesmondASounds.com, where you can get free FL Studio Patcher plugins, free loops, free guides, everything you need to level up your music production. Once again, go to DesmondASounds.com or click the link in the description. Go there now and totally transform your music production.